Hi, this is Marnie Melrose, also known on Twitter as Minus Marnie. And today my special guest is Paul Snow. And I met him last year, or rather this year, a few months ago at the Texas Bitcoin Conference. And then we were together again at the International Money Transfer Conference. So we thought now that we've met a couple of times that we should get together, have him on the show, and tell us about some of the projects that he's working on. And how I always like to get it started, because my viewers are always curious, how do these people get involved with Bitcoin? How do they first learn about Bitcoin? What excites them about Bitcoin? So why don't you share that with us, Paul?
Well, back in 2011, I ran across an article off of Slashdot about this digital currency concept. And I read the article, and at that time they were discussing this crazy exchange, Mt. Gox, and how you could just use PayPal to put money into Mt. Gox and buy these Bitcoins. And so I went over there and bought a pile of Bitcoins at 77 cents. And then I tracked it for a while. I watched it go up to 30 some odd dollars and then crash afterwards. And then I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention. I never did the deep technical dive because I was involved in another development project, oddly enough. And so, of course, my focus is over there on getting that project done and whatnot. And at the beginning of 2013, there was a lot more interest. The price of Bitcoin had gone up to $13, and there were a number of very exciting articles. And I actually bothered to read some of the technical background for Bitcoin. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is really a big deal. And the second thought was, oh, I wish I had put more than just a few dollars that I had laying around into Bitcoin. And then the third thought was, oh my gosh. I went home and I sat down on the couch and I told my wife, I said, I may have inadvertently funded our retirement with some pocket change, you know? So that's how I got into Bitcoin. And of course, I began looking at Bitcoin very seriously all through the April run-up. After things settled down, after the April run-up, I believed quite earnestly that this thing was going to take over the world. So I began trying to get involved in different Bitcoin projects. I have a Bitcoin bank, a personal banker project that's kind of on hold. And the idea on that one was to put an entire firewalled server architecture in a box that a consumer could buy, and it would essentially hold all your Bitcoin always in cold storage and allow you to put all kinds of restrictions on the access, like so much Bitcoin per day and two-factor authentication and all that, but it would be a box that you had in your home and not on the internet, so as to make your balance more secure. That project's still on hold. I think there's some other technologies that will make that project even more compelling than the way I originally constructed it. And then I got heavily involved with the Austin Bitcoin meetup group, and as part of the meetup group, we started the mini Austin Bitcoin conferences, and we did 3 of them. Really, I did. I tried to do it all. All I wanted to do was set up something for a couple of hours, bring a speaker in, and just have something compelling once a month. And this turns out to be enormously time-consuming for one person to do. So I decided, well, I'll bring some people on. And when we decided to bring some people on, it got bigger and bigger, and it became the Texas Bitcoin Conference. And so in November of last year, I quit my day job and became full-time in the Bitcoin community, ran the conference, and now started up this notary chains concept.
That's great. That's great. Well, I really enjoyed the Texas Bitcoin Conference, and that was my first conference that I ever went to.
Wow, cool.
And so it was, well, Bitcoin conference. I've been to like every Macworld since I think the beginning.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I saw the rise and the fall, and the rise and the fall. And
yeah. Well, the Apple conferences I hear are really cool. I haven't had the opportunity to go to them.
They are very cool. We're a very bunch of eclectic people, and you know, I actually find some parallels to the beginning days of Apple with the type of people that I'm finding at the beginning days of Bitcoin. So for me, it's that, like, you know, that evangelistic, like, excitement of what's possible in the world. I see that parallel a little bit here. So I think that's probably what attracts me to it. And so I had a lot of fun. I'm glad that I was able to go, and thank you for having me. And it was fun meeting you, you know, just last week there. And you mentioned, like, about this new notary chain that you're doing. So tell us a little bit more about that, because it was intriguing, the idea behind that and how that could work with Bitcoin.
Well, the concept of notary chains builds upon this idea of a digital notary. Quite a number of projects have looked at taking the digital signature of some digital artifact and putting it into the blockchain. And by doing that, you've proved that that document existed at the time that you created the signature, because signatures are essentially created from one-way functions. You can go from a document to a signature, but you can't go from a signature to any sort of document, because the math and the search to find a document that would fit a signature is just massively difficult. It is the basis of the security of the Bitcoin blockchain. So the security depends upon the fact that these signatures are so difficult to find. That's how you adjust the difficulty, right? You require more and more zeros in the hash for a Bitcoin block to fit, and it takes the equivalent of 100,000 supercomputers to match the hashing power of the Bitcoin blockchain right now. That number just keeps going up and up. It's incredible how much power is up there, and that's with just a few zeros. To create a signature, create a document that fit a known signature would be orders and orders and orders of magnitude more difficult than just finding a proper signature for a Bitcoin block. Okay, just to kind of give an idea how difficult that problem is. So anyway, your signature is proof that the document exists. If you put that signature into the Bitcoin blockchain, then you have essentially proven that that document existed at the time that that transaction was submitted to the Bitcoin blockchain. Now,
so tell us how, because I know that there's other things working on this as well. Tell us how that's different from, for instance, proof of work.
Oh, well, proof of work is what I alluded to earlier, is the search for a satisfactory hash for a block. And that's very, very difficult. Because that's very, very difficult, once you've found a solution, that proves that you did a lot of work to find that solution. You were either that or you were clairvoyant and you could just answer questions without any kind of basis for answering them.
Actually, it wasn't proof of work. There's another project. Is it
proof of existence?
That's it. Proof of existence. Yes.
Yes. Proof of existence. Proof of existence.
That's not what I was talking about.
Yeah. Proof of existence is this idea that you can gather up a set of signatures, you can hash those signatures together and place them into the blockchain, and that will prove that that whole set of documents existed at the point in time that that signature was placed into the blockchain. And so proof of existence is very good for saying that a document existed at a point in time. What Notary Chains is going to do is extend the idea of proof of existence to proof of process. And proof of process is far more compelling in some sense. For example, if you are a doctor and you would like to prove that you followed a treatment plan that's appropriate for the diagnosis, that the proper tests were performed, that the proper doctors reviewed those tests, the patient was informed, the treatment plan was provided to the patient either followed the treatment plan or didn't, what your response was, so forth and so on. Basically, the whole patient's, the progress from the beginning to the end of a treatment plan is a process, and would be greatly helped in the case of in the situation where there's a conflict later on, if you can prove the process. And it also helps a hospital to track that the doctors and the nurses are following the process, the treatment plans, because a proof of process chain would be something that's easy to audit by the hospital. Now, the only thing you're placing into Notary Chains are digital signatures and whatever information is important for your process. That does not necessarily mean that
at this time and this date, right?
Right, but it doesn't. But it doesn't mean that the documents are in the chain.
Got it. Okay.
So the documents can be completely private. So Notary Chain provides this audible trail without compromising any kind of confidentiality or HIPAA rules or anything else. Because basically a digital signature is meaningless on its own. So, but it's very meaningful within the context of perhaps a hospital's records in their treatment plan.
Oh yeah, and I can imagine. I've been involved with work process, for a very long time. That's what I do, is I build processes for companies, right? As
right.
They're working, all the little pieces and how the pieces flow from one piece to another piece. And at one point in time when I was working with Days, like 30% of my client base was lawyers, right?
Wow.
And especially when you're talking about law, you have a lot of process, a lot of dates that have to be hard dates, right? And those dates have to be adhered to, and proof has to be shown that those things happened. And yeah, so we've been building that into our work processes, where we can, print out, okay, for this project, this is everything that happened. But that's not really a publicly verifiable. So wow, now that you've told me that, I'm really even more excited about this, because I can absolutely see where that would be phenomenal for legal process, medical process. I imagine probably manufacturing processes as well to
absolutely
audit, especially because you could, so imagine this, right? Wow, that's cool. So imagine you're manufacturing a car, right? And you could have the computer, the robot that makes this piece, put in there, I put this piece on the car at this date and this time, right?
Right.
And when they're going through and auditing what happened with the malfunction of creating this particular car, right? Where was the failure in the chain? And holy cow, man, that is exciting.
Well, yeah, and there are even very mundane applications. For example, if you talk to Stephen Sprague, the fellow behind Rivets, are you familiar with what he's doing?
No.
Well, he is taking the really short answer is almost all the computers you're using have a $4 or $5 chip that it was placed there to support Hollywood's DRM, digital rights management.
Right, yep.
And basically, you don't get to watch the video unless you are using the particular computer that's authorized to watch the video. Well, how does that work? It works because the little piece of hardware has a private key, and when you bought the video, the public key from that little piece of hardware was sent to the seller. The seller keyed the video to that public key, sent it to your computer, and only that little piece of hardware that's not even part of the processor can decrypt the video so that you can watch it on your device. And you can even pair that hardware with some other hardware so that maybe all 3 computers in your house can access the video. But
like we do in iTunes, where we have 5 computers can use the music that I downloaded from iTunes.
Right, but no one else. Of course, exactly. iTunes, I think, is DRM free now, but the hardware was placed in all these computers. Steven Sprague is working to make that little chip, which really all it does is manage public keys and private keys. So he's working on the software to make every computer a hardware Bitcoin wallet. There are no private keys that malware could steal in order to steal your Bitcoin.
Wow.
And it's huge, okay? But here's an additional application. You put one of these $3 or $4 chips into a piece of security, like a security cam, right? And the security cam then will be taking video of some location. Occasionally it'll compute a hash of the video that it's taking. It will sign it with its piece of hardware and send it to the notary chain. Okay? So the notary chain will now end up with a log of cryptographic proof, A, that the video was taken by this particular security cam, because no other security cam will have that private key, right? 2, the video has not been altered, because if you alter it, you'll break the hash.
Right.
And thus your so maybe I only have 2 points, but thus the security camera is taking cryptographically proven video of a location, and you can prove that no one has altered the video. This is important in cases where somebody says, "Oh, that's not the video. Oh, that timestamp was wrong. Oh, it's been altered. They went into Adobe Illustrator and added something or something, But in this case, you have essentially a signed log of signatures that prove that the camera took what it said it took.
Well, that's pretty cool. And also, so here's the one thing that I thought was really interesting, and just correct me if I'm wrong here, because when we were at the last conference, we were talking about how we didn't want to flood Bitcoin with a whole bunch of transactions, so we can just put up a batch of transactions from the notary chain, so that maybe we're only putting in X number of transactions per day onto the blockchain, and so that's like another additional verification. Tell me more about that whole process, because I found that very interesting.
Okay, well, a lot of the Bitcoin 2.0 applications are seeking to put transactions into the blockchain that aren't really Bitcoin transactions. They're transactions necessary to allocate cars to provide a taxi service, or their transactions to prove that you've provided a certain amount of network access for mesh networks that will provide internet in a distributed autonomous fashion. There's all kinds of these sorts of applications that require the implementation and proving of processes that aren't Bitcoin transactions. So most of these Bitcoin 2.0 applications, they either end up adding a lot to the blockchain that's additional transactions, that aren't really Bitcoin transactions, or they
rather than the currency transactions you're talking about, right?
Huh? Yeah, they're not currency transactions.
Got it.
Right, not primarily. Or they end up creating yet another cryptocurrency. Well, Notary Chains creates these notary blocks, which are combined into a single hash and placed into the blockchain at a periodic rate. And that rate's fairly small. And because these transactions are kept off the blockchain, we have more flexibility in how they're structured. And without getting into the technical implementation, I can say that what we do at one level is create a set of hashes which get placed in, they get hashed together and get secured by the Bitcoin blockchain. And then off those hashes, we have more flexible data entry that's chain-based. So, for instance, we talked about a security camera log. The security camera log chain would be separate from the business process or the manufacturing chain or the patient treatment plan chain. So the user, one, Bitcoin is left without a lot of extra transactions, so we're reducing the bloat on the Bitcoin blockchain.
Which I think is important.
Right, is very important. The second level, the set of hashes that secure everything within Notary Chains is kept very small because they're fairly uniform no matter how much data they represent. And then off of that, you get to download only the chains that you're interested in. Right. So, and then the Notary Chain system incentivizes real-time audits of all of the chains at all levels. And so essentially, proof of work in Bitcoin is securing our ledger, and then proof of audit is proving via audits that we can run and via audits that third parties can run that every entry in the notary block is following the rules that involve either the chain that it's involved in or the Notary Chains system in general. So you basically allow yourself, you can be allowed to trust a party that's subject to continuous independent third-party audits. And it's more, the architecture is even more interesting because we're going to be setting up federated servers that are all doing audits of themselves as well, and provide failover and redundancy in case of various sorts of attacks or server failures or natural disasters or whatever. So it's a very interesting architecture, and I'm really excited about building this thing.
That is awesome. So, you know, in closing, give us a little bit more of your background, because you sound like a pretty smart guy.
Well, at least I get that far. I've been in compilers and interpreters for most of my career. I started out, my first job was at Texas Instruments building forward-looking infrared radar FLIR systems, and you know, basically for missiles and bombs and that sort of thing. I very quickly, within a year, realized that was not for me. I'm not. I thought I was morally structured that I could do this work, but it turns out no. At my heart, I had too many pacifist leanings, and so I quit TI and I went to Texas A&M and got my graduate work. Did my graduate work, and I got involved in creating compilers and development environments, largely in stack-based languages. I ended up writing the first PostScript interpreter to ever ship against Adobe's PostScript in printers. It used to be very, very expensive in the late 80s to license PostScript. And I wrote a clone for a company called Printware out in Minnesota. and in Minneapolis, and they shipped in December, the first unit, December of 1987, and that was the first clone to actually ship in a printer. It was all written in assembly language and in this language called Fifth, stack-based language. They wanted to write it in a fourth-based, fifth-based language because PostScript itself is stack-based. And I've since created rules engines for the state of Texas to process all of the food stamps and TANF and all the Health and Human Service Assistance programs. All that eligibilities run in Texas and Michigan on a rules engine I wrote back in 2000, 2001. And a bunch of other things, but most of it has been within compilers and interpreters, and that's one of the things. Once I realized that that Bitcoin, the script is all stack-based scripts, I thought, wow, this is the place for me.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I feel the same way. I was a C++ programmer a long time ago when I was younger, but you know why I got out of that? Because a life of pizza, beer, and cigarettes and 4 a.m. nights just wasn't really the lifestyle that I wanted to lead, you know, long term. I'm not this person. So,
well, I'm still in that lifestyle.
We need people like you.
Except the cigarettes. I never could do the cigarettes, but add the Big Macs, and I think the whole health thing's a wash. So.
Exactly. So, yeah, you know, I kind of understand your world there, because I was in it just for a little period of time, but I remember that, and I remember Printware actually, because you know I was working for Apple. I was their service manager down in New Zealand.
Oh, right.
That was 89 to 94. I was in that whole world down there.
Oh, wow. And you remember Printware?
I do, yeah. I do. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
They're still around.
Yeah, I worked at Apple Business Center down there, and I started out as a tech, and then I became the service manager. You know, and yeah, we saw all of that software, and I mean, most of our jobs as tech was actually in software, in figuring out the other pieces of software that were arguing with the other ones, right?
Right,
and all of those interactions together. Okay, we got to remove this extension and put that extension in, and make sure that they're all updated and all that fun stuff. So yeah, and I specifically do remember that one. So yeah, it's a small world, isn't it? Well, I am so glad that you are in Bitcoin, and I am really appreciative of what you've done so far, you know, to extend it, and I am excited about the projects that you have going forward. And I want to thank you for coming on our show today, and I look forward to the future. And tell us when the next Bitcoin conference is.
All right, the next Bitcoin conference will be March 27th through 29th of 2015, and right now we're having we're still looking for the right venue, and we're working that out, and we'll be posting that venue as soon as we nail it down. So, but do mark your calendar and do plan to come.
Oh, it's already on my calendar, that's for sure. Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show, like I said today, and we look forward to learning more. I'll have to have you on again as Notary Chains develops over time and you guys get closer to, you know, rollout on that.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.